Welcome to the first episode of the Rally Podcast, where we hope to rally today's youth under the banner of Christ and possibly answer a question or two. I'm Andrew Pemberton, your host, one of the leaders of the Rally Youth here at Trinity Church in Temple, Texas, and joined with me is Pastor Mark Dow of the Rally Youth here at Temple, Texas. How you doing?
Swell. Doing great.
Good. So tell me, just to kind of kick it off here for those that don't know what the Rally is, how long have you been pastoring the Rally?
Okay.
I know it's been so long.
It has been, and it wasn't always the Rally, but youth pastor at Trinity, I've been here for what's this year, 2024. Started. Okay, I've been pastor for 7.5 years now.
7.5 years. That's a good while.
Yeah, it feels like it's gone by really fast. So it doesn't feel like it's nearly been that long.
I've been here for going on 5 years now?
5 years,
something
yeah.
like that. And some years it feels long, some years
It does, yeah.
Now, what does the name the Rally mean? Like what was the vision for coming up with the name of the Rally?
So the name the Rally comes from Isaiah 11:10 about how all the nations will rally to him, who is Jesus. And it was during a time where there was just political craziness, there was social craziness, everybody was doing some sort of protest or even rallies or whatever. And I decided that we should be rallying to Christ as a group and as a youth, and just making a statement in that. And then it just kind of stuck, and we've kind of run with it from there.
And I feel like, being here at the Rally, I feel like we're getting a lot closer to that than we used to.
Yes.
I feel like they are getting a lot closer, a lot more intertwined.
Yeah, and it's supposed to also mix with the vision at Trinity, which is connecting generations, which is all of us rallying as generations, but us specifically as our generation, as the Gen Z or whatever now, rallying to Christ. So,
Which I feel like that's something that's needed nowadays.
Oh yes,
A lot of people don't do that.
oh yes.
Well, here at the Rally, one of the things that we do is we do a thing called asking for a friend, which means people ask us questions in anonymous ways. And so we got one of those from a couple weeks ago, and it asks, what is the best way to spend time with the Lord?
Ooh, the
Kind of
best
goes in
way?
what we'll be talking about too.
Yeah. The best way is dependent on the situation, I feel like. I feel like one of the easiest ways, if you will, is through just worship. Because it's more of just, I'm here, Lord, I'm worshiping you, I'm giving you everything, and just receiving. I think that's one of the easiest ways, whether it's through worship music or just, and I'm talking like listening to music, singing to the Lord. But prayer is very powerful and good, and it's easy. I think prayer is probably the best, but it takes getting used to. Because it's getting used to and learning to hear his voice, as the word says, it's learning to hear his voice. So it's not that you just, at first it feels almost one-sided until you can really start to understand him, which also comes from one of the third ways, which is to read your word. And doing all those things in conjunction is when you are in worship and prayer, and reading your word all at the same time, and being led by the Spirit in all of it, and just worshiping him the whole time, that's where it gets, that's the best way, is to do that. I mean, there's other ways, like while serving and while teaching others, there's those ways where you can fellowship with the Lord. But I think that for personal reasons, maybe I don't know if the best way is any one way.
Yeah.
It's just spending time with the Lord is the best way.
Yeah. And I also feel like, too, like a lot of people think you have to have just those moments in your like quiet time and stuff, or your quiet place,
Yeah.
and things. But pretty much like when the Bible talks about your quiet place or your special place with Him, however it mentions it, it's just mainly just talking about whenever you just start talking to Him, just being with Him.
When you're with Him.
You can be with Him in the car. You can be with Him in that alone time with Him, or you can be with Him like now, just me and you talking and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that once we get a grasp on that, the secret place isn't a closet. You don't have to be in a prayer closet. While that is a powerful place and a good place to have, I think it's important for us to understand that the secret place is just our relationship with Him and where we can go to talk to Him in a spiritual sense.
Yeah.
So I think that the best way to answer the question is any way that you can.
Yep. And I think that's kind of a good segue into what we're going to be talking about. And it's based off of what you started talking about this last week on Wednesday night, which you called it FOMO, redefining the fear of missing out. What does that mean?
Okay, so FOMO means fear of missing out. And I think it's an issue that every person has dealt with and still deals with, especially with modern day distractions like social media or video games or watching shows or whatever. I don't know, but like the modern day, this generation is filled with the fear of missing out on what could be fun, what could be entertaining, what could be happening right now, whether it's with your friends or whether it's something they're watching or something that's happening. I don't know. And my goal was to redefine the fear of missing out for us as Christians, for us as believers in Christ. Our goal in this small series, I guess, if you will, was to change it from fear of missing out what the world's got and fear of missing out what the Lord has for you. So we want to be afraid that we're gonna miss what the Lord has. There's a lot more to it, but that's the basis of it. And we pulled from Romans 12, 1 and 2, and then Philippians 2, 12 and 13. And we'll get into that more, but that's the scripture references we used.
And in that, like you're talking about the fear of missing out what God has for you and stuff. One of the scriptures that you talked about talks about fear and trembling. Like
Romans 12, 13. Sorry, Philippians 2:13.
Philippians 2:13. Let me look that up real quick. But can you?
I've got it right here.
I do.
Yeah.
Nice.
I came prepared. So 12 and 13 says, "So then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, both to desire and to work for His good pleasure."
Can you explain to us what you think fear and trembling means?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when we have read this in the past or when it's preached even, that we should be afraid to do things wrong, to do the wrong things. When in reality, I think that more than anything forces us to do wrong. It's just like the law, where the law, the Old Testament, or not the Old Testament, but the Ten Commandments and then all the 600 something laws after that only just pointed out sin. They didn't show you how to get out, and that's what Jesus did. So the fear and trembling, it says to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. I used the analogy of a math equation. I used a basic one, just 2 + 2 = 4. So we have the answer, which is the 4, and we have an equation that leads up to that answer. If you work it out, 2 + 2 = 4. But if I just told you that 2 + 2 = 4, and you didn't work it out, you didn't do it yourself, and you just believed me based off of what I told you, then who's to stop someone from coming in who has worked it out on their own and made this really complicated or whatever equation that they may have pulled numbers from somewhere you don't know, and show you their answer, which is 2 + 2 = 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we used this because I think it's one of the best. I think it's such a good analogy because logic and reason prove God's existence. Not only that, but they prove the Bible is the truth, is the answer. And the reason that I brought the fear and trembling into this is because we should be making sure that the fear and trembling isn't afraid that we will do things wrong. It's afraid that we will not put the right components together to see the real picture, see the real answer. And when you put to practice what the Word says, when you put to practice what God's told us, then you will find that the answer is you'll find that the answer is the truth. You will put together the equation correctly, and our goal should be to make sure we're putting it together correctly.
Mm-hmm. And how do you like find the answer out? Like, how do you put it together correctly? Like,
yeah, okay. So, if you and I bring this all up because, so let me finish this here, I guess. I bring this all up of the answer and the equation and all of this because many times we are just told what's in the Bible is the truth. Mm-hmm. Many times we'll even read the Bible and say, okay, that's the truth. Mm-hmm. But if someone else comes by who is not saved, not a believer in Christ, and seems to have life figured out, or this specific situation you're in figured out, and they show you the steps that they took to get there, and if you haven't worked out your own salvation to the T, to the details, making sure that you're following up what the Lord has said or what the Word says, if you haven't worked that out and you've just been told all your life, I think that's a major issue with the church today.
Especially if you grew up in the church.
Especially if you grew up in the church. And I'm a pastor's kid. You're a pastor's kid. You know how this is. Like we were told, but we were never told to work it out.
Yeah.
We were just told you were raised this way. This is the way it is. And the reason I brought all this up is because many times we have a fear of missing out what other things could be holding because we haven't worked out the truth. Mm-hmm. We have only listened to others tell us what the truth is. And so who's to say my best friend can't come in and say, hey, this is actually really good, really fun, really whatever. And it's sin, but yet it looks like the right answer. It's giving him pleasure. It's giving him a sense of satisfaction. It seems right. And who's to say that, how can I prove to myself? Because it's more important that you prove this to yourself. You're not proving this for anyone else at the moment. Mm-hmm. He says to work out your own salvation, not to go work out someone else's.
Yeah.
And so when someone comes in and gives you the wrong answer, you can go back if you have worked out your own salvation, you can go back and point out, oh, well, this is where you went wrong. This number, where did this number come from? Or, oh, I see where the error is. You forgot to carry this one or whatever. And I think the way this applies in biblical ways, in the ways of living for the Lord, is, are we building our blocks of life, our foundation, on Him from the very basics to the very complex? And I think it comes down to you have to be reading your Word. You have to do that, yes. But you have to apply what the Word has said, and it takes work because you actually have to search for how to apply specific principles in the Word to your life. I think that, to answer your question of what does that look like, I think it comes down to, okay, how do I love, or something like that, some sort of concept like that. Do I love like Christ loved? Or is that going to be, and you start to put into action, how did He love? You take broad concepts of your life and you break it down to see what the Word has to say about that concept. How does Jesus do it? How did how did Paul teach us to do it? How did Peter teach us to do it? Like, what does the word say? What did even they do in the Old Testament that proves this? And how can I start to do that in my life? Because it's modern day and it's a little different, and yet it's still very the same, especially when it comes to people.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the way that you start to put together the equation to get the right answer, which is Jesus. He is the right answer. But if you haven't worked it out and if you haven't applied it, you will be easily distracted and led astray by someone who thinks that they have the right answer.
Yeah. So what it sounds like you're saying is it's pretty much impossible to like truly know the answer unless you've put in the process of figuring it out yourself.
That's a good, that's a good way to put it. And I was praying about it this morning, and because I knew we were doing this, and the word from Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 came to mind about Jesus being the author and the finisher of my faith. Another, in this version, it says, looking only to Jesus. Therefore, since we also have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let's rid ourselves of every obstacle and the sin which so easily entangles us. And let's run with endurance the race that is set before us. Very much a process, just like the working out. Looking only at Jesus, the originator and perfecter of the faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, he ran the race, despising the shame, and he has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. And that's Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Just as in a book, if you were to pick up a book right now, wherever you find it, especially nowadays, you see who wrote it, you see the author, you see the title, and you see that first. You can even read summaries. You can read or even reviews, sometimes on the book, most of the time on the back of the book or on the leaflet where you open it. But and you can even hear from others about the book. Maybe the book has been widely reviewed. Maybe it's a very popular book, or whatever. And you can listen to what it will say about it, but to ultimately come to your own conclusion, to see what's in the book and if it was good, you have to read the book. And you have to read it for yourself. You don't read it in the context of someone else or how this person thought about it. You have to read it for yourself. If you don't, then you will just have heard blah, 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 and then someone else can come by and give a negative review, and now you have a negative view. And you're on shifting sand. You don't have a foundation because all you have is just the name, the title, and what someone thinks about it. And it is that book. It is critically acclaimed. It is this and that, but you have to come to your own conclusion. If you don't, then where is your salvation? Is it just in, anyways?
Yeah. I think what it reminds me of is the scripture where, like at the end of all things, when the people are coming up to Jesus telling them, I did this in your name, I cast out demons in your name, I did all this, and Jesus tells them, well, depart from me, for I never knew you. I think it comes on that they knew him, like they knew his name, and they knew that he was powerful, but they never, like you said, never put into work, never actually pursued him for this him himself. So therefore, he never knew him.
Yeah.
Never had a close, deep relationship with him.
Exactly. And that's where I was going to get to here, which is the difference in believing and the difference in faith in. So you can believe in Jesus just as much as I'm sitting in a chair right now, and I'm believing there's a chair here. I use this analogy on Wednesday, where you can believe that you're looking at a chair, you've seen it, you've heard about it, whatever. You see the chair, and you believe it's there. But until you take the steps over to it and sit down yourself, you will never know if it can hold you. And the stepping over and the working out of sitting in it is faith. It's putting the faith in something to believe it'll hold you, I guess. And if in that analogy, but I think that it absolutely applies to Jesus. You can believe in Jesus all you want. You have heard about him, you know about him, you even go to church, and you've gone for years. But have you actually been putting in I wouldn't say putting in the work. I would say, have you actually been applying what he says to your life? Have you actually been putting it into practice? If you haven't, then you just believe in him.
Yeah.
But faith, our faith walk has to be us working it out, be walking in him, fellowshipping with him, like the first question from asking for a friend, or whatever you're applying his principles to your life. Those things, that's what putting your faith in Jesus is. And he doesn't ask us to believe in him. He says, believe into him, which is faith. And that's where those the people he says, depart from me, I never knew you. They never believed into him. They believed his name was powerful, which is truth. They believed, who he was powerful. And they even believed when they got there that they had been in him, but they never even walked with him. They just used him.
Yep.
And we have to be very careful that we're not just using him.
Yeah. That's like, you got to watch out, like, what are the reasons why, in my opinion, why you're pursuing after Jesus, because it needs to be beyond whether this is like what originally got you to pursue after him is fine, but it needs to be beyond this, like the physical, I guess you put it that way.
Yeah.
Like beyond like what he can give you.
Right.
And I feel like if you're pursuing him starting out that way, that's kind of like the easy equation.
Yeah.
It's like, fine, that's good. It brought you to him. But there comes a time where you need to dig a little deeper and start laying a deeper foundation than just the little, tidbit that you got, and start realizing that you just pursued him because it's him.
Yeah.
Because we can believe all we want to, like you're saying, we can believe that Jesus was real because history flat out proves there was a man named Jesus that died. But it takes deep faith to understand that this man not only died, but he's alive again.
Yeah.
And he's still walking day to day with us now.
Yeah. I think to go along with that, my dad started believing in Christ because he didn't want to go to hell. And I think, man, that was like,
I think that's why most people start.
Well, yeah, and especially our parents' generation,
Yeah.
that kind of generation, a lot of it was preached that is doom and gloom or whatever. I don't know. Not all of it, but there was some of those churches, and my dad started out that way, but he didn't stay there. As he was like, oh, okay, well, I just went to him because I didn't want to go to hell. I didn't want my soul to be damned for eternity. And yet from there, the Lord worked with him. That was a simple equation. And he brought him to more complex, and showing him his love, showing him his joy, showing him peace, which are more complex equations. And as he worked those out and started applying them to his life, he realized that the going to hell thing, that's not even a big deal. It's seeking the Lord.
Yep.
And this kind of brings me to something that I didn't get to say on Wednesday, and I plan on saying on the next Wednesday, which is this. It's very important that we don't stir up the fear of missing out from God on our own. If you don't feel the fear of missing out what the Lord has for you, don't go and try to make that fear.
Yeah.
Because then it's like you're forcing yourself to fear. That's not the type of fear he's talking about. God revealing himself to you will make you want him. There is no way around that. If he reveals himself to you, which he will if you just let him, he will create the desire for more of him. And I think that's important for me to say because, I was talking so much about, fear of missing out. We need to redefine it for us. We need to be afraid to miss out, that we're missing out what the Lord has for us. Not because we're afraid of him, not because he's gonna curse you forever if you do miss out. He's not like that. He wants so much for you, and it's really up to us if we can get it or don't. And it's up to us to make sure that we're seeing the right answer. But if you don't feel that fear, And so many young Christians don't, because they just got saved, or maybe even they're not even saved yet, and
Yeah.
they just maybe started going to church, or maybe just heard about him, and they don't feel that fear, but they're being told to fear not getting him. Well, then they're going to stir it up themselves, and then it will become religion. And that's not, it'll become a religious act and not a desire for more of him.
Yeah. I think, like, personally, that's what a lot of things, especially the American church, have become, is they're all religious acts now. Because we're always trying to get something from them, you know? And because we've been taught, not to say that that humans aren't strong and we can't do things, but we've been taught that we can do everything in our life in and of ourselves, when it's the exact opposite of what Jesus talked about.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that it also goes to what my dad's been talking about on Sundays, which is the fact of really, especially, and I'm kind of switching gears here to the younger believers, it's not up to you to know everything, and it's not up to you to have to follow every single thing that the word says yet. Like it's a process, and we work out our salvation because it's a process. And so it comes to the same thing of maybe you don't have a fear of missing out of something specific yet, because you're only at a different stage. You're at a smaller stage. You're doing simple equations right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like if you were trying to become a rocket scientist, let's say a nuclear physicist or something, and you're in third grade, and you're doing third grade math, you're doing third grade science. Those things, you first of all, you can't comprehend. You can't even get close to comprehending nuclear physics yet. Or even the intermediate place to there. You can't even get the stepping stones yet.
Yeah.
But you are on the foundational track, and all you need to worry about is getting your addition right, getting your subtraction right, starting your times tables, whatever. So that's there's a building block in the faith of our walk with Christ. And just because you're not at the place someone else is yet doesn't mean, and you can desire to get there, but doesn't mean you have to fear that you're missing out exactly what that is. You just need to worry about what you've got right now, and the Lord will introduce more to you.
Yeah.
He's a great teacher.
Yeah.
And he's one of those teachers also, and we said this, taking a math test. You have to show your work. If you don't show your work, then the question's wrong, or the answer's wrong, even if it's right. They're going to count it wrong because they don't know how you got there. They don't know that you can prove it.
Yeah.
You have to prove it. And that's what Romans 12, 1 and 2 was talking about. And do not be conformed to this world. Romans 12:2 says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect, which that last bit is the same thing as in Philippians 2:13. But we must prove for ourselves the good and acceptable will, which is we must prove to ourselves the working out. And we have to work it out so that we can prove to ourselves what the answer is. And that's what it all boils down to. This is that if we're not working it out, then we'll be able to be shifted off track.
Yeah.
But
what I love with this whole thing is the fact that the whole time we're working it out, you're not alone. Like, God's in this with you the whole time you're doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think you've used this analogy before, but the fact of, like, when a toddler is learning how to walk, the dad doesn't get mad when the toddler stumbles and falls. The dad goes up, picks the kid up, and they start over again. That's the way God is with us. Like, when we're trying to figure these things out, because sometimes there'll be easy problems to solve, like 2 + 2. But then sometimes you really got to dig deep and try to figure it out. And it's not going to be. You got to realize it's not just you just going to be figuring it out. Because if you try to figure it out on your own, you're not going to.
Yeah.
But the Holy Spirit's there with you the whole way, walking you through the process and helping you solve. How the heck you find all the different digits to pi and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And as this kind of mixes well with the fruit of the Spirit. You can't produce fruit if you haven't been planted and you haven't been growing. The fruit of the Spirit doesn't come immediately. And to get to peace, which is one of the fruits of the Spirit, to get to joy, which is one of the fruits of the Spirit, to get to steadfastness, which is patience, to get to kindness, to get to love, to get to those things, we have to be rooted and growing in Him, and those things will be produced through our works. And I think it's important also to understand that when we talk about works, we're not talking about going and serving. We're not talking about going and doing something specific, getting involved in a ministry. While that is very, very good, and I believe everyone should at some point in some way, I think it's important for us to see that works is really working out your salvation in yourself and applying Him to you. Because you might have never volunteered yet, but you can still have the peace of the Lord if you've been working at His principles, His promises, working out what He's said. Then you will start to see those things produced in you. And it goes so well with the fruits of the Spirit. They're not immediate, but our God's a God of process. I mean, He made the world, He made nature, and obviously nothing happens immediately.
Yep. Yeah, if it all happened immediately, what would be the fun in that?
What would be the point? Yeah. Where would be the reward? And if you immediately got to it, that's technically what magic is circumventing the process. And that's not God's way. There are miracles and things that happen, but then that's just up to His grace. But, we're getting off topic here, but yeah.
Well, I think this went pretty well, especially for our first episode.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to be talking about next week and continuing this discussion.
Yeah, get a little deeper dive.
Yep. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. Well, thank y'all for listening to the Rally Podcast. If y'all don't have a home church anywhere and just so happen to live around the Central Texas area, here in Temple, Texas, we are in Trinity Church at Temple. Our name's Trinity Church, and we meet on Sundays at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. And Wednesdays is when the youth meet. It's when we have meetings for all ages at 7 p.m. And if you want more info on that, go to tctemple.com, our Trinity Church of Temple on our Facebook page. And I hope to see y'all back next week, and I'll talk to you later.